Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Shorts Roundtable. I'm Paul Sloop, the Short Films Programming Manager for the Cleveland International Film Festival, and I'll be hosting today's talk. But before we get started, we want to take a moment to offer special thanks to PNC for sponsoring our Filmmaker Conversations content throughout this year's festival. On today's roundtable, we'll be joined by filmmakers from some of the short films included in Family Shorts Program 2. So with that in mind, please allow me to welcome our guests for today's conversation. Thank you all so much for joining us today for this chat. And to get us started, please, I would ask each of you to take turns introducing yourself, your film, your role on the film, and where you're calling in from today. Let's start with Mehrdad.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for having us, Paul. Really appreciate it. My name is Mehrdad Sarlak. I'm calling in from Los Angeles, California, and I am the producer of the short doc, Just Hold On.
Hey everyone, I'm Sam Davis. I'm the co-director of Just Hold On, and I'm calling from Los Angeles as well.
Hi, my name is Yibing Jiang. I'm the director of the animated short Windup. I'm calling from Los Angeles too. Just moved here.
Hey, I'm Brian Laws. I'm calling from Oklahoma City, and I was the writer and director for Lost Kings.
Hello, my name is Alejandra Aragón. I'm calling from the border between Mexico and the U.S. on the Mexican side of the border, Ciudad Juarez, and I am the director of Disrupted Borders.
Excellent. Well, again, thank you all so much for taking the time to join us and share some information about your films. To get the conversation started, what I would ask each of you to take turns doing is just let us know either what the inspiration was that led to the making of this film, or maybe how you came to be involved in the making of the film. Let's start with Mehrdad again.
Well, I'll kick it off to Sam for the inspiration, but I will give you a spoiler that it started with Sam and our other director, Rika, going down a YouTube rabbit hole one night watching crazy videos of small children on the back of sheep and mutton. So Sam, you want to talk about how you guys got inspired to want to do this, and then I'll talk about how I got involved.
Yeah, that's a great setup. So Rika and I, like Mehrdad said, stumbled upon some viral videos of a sport called mutton busting, which is like a rodeo sport for little kids, really little kids. And we were just instantly intrigued, and we started to kind of explore different people who were involved. And we happened across a little girl named Marley who had just won, I think was it San Antonio? Houston. Okay, she had just won the mutton busting championship at the Houston Rodeo the year before, and we saw an interview with her that was like a post-game interview after her win, and she was just incredible and just explosive personality. And we decided to reach out to her family to see if we could potentially make a film about her. And it took some time for them to warm up to the idea, but eventually they did, and we went to Texas.
So the way that I got involved is that this is the third time that I've had the honor to be back at Cleveland, and Sam Rika and I actually did our very first short film here a few years ago called Moderator. And so Sam Rika and I have been friends for a few years, and when they found out about the story and the family gave the green light that, okay, we'll let you come into our lives and cover our little girl's story, they sent me an email and they said, hey, we got this crazy cool project, curious if you'd be interested in producing it with us or for us. And I really didn't even need to know much about it because I love Sam and Rika more than anything. And as soon as they emailed, I said, I'm in. I don't need to know about the project. And then, of course, once I got to know about it, my first question was, what on earth is mutton busting? So I had to Google it too. And I mean, if you've never seen it before, it really is kind of crazy because they take these little 6-7-year-old kids and they put them on the back of these sheep, and the sheep kind of fire out like a rocket, and the kids just got to hold on. So it's really funny. And then when you find out about her story and the fact that she's a cancer survivor, she was diagnosed with cancer in vitro, and when she was still in the womb, and she not only beat cancer, but then she went on and beat the mutton. It was just a story we had to tell. So that's how I got involved with it as a producer.
That's great. Thank you both. Yibing?
Windup is actually inspired by my own personal experiences. I was often sick when I was a kid. My memory of those days kind of foggy, but on the other hand, from my parents' perspective, the events was way more serious. They told me they spent countless nights taking care of me and fighting their own emotions. I didn't know why they were so worried when I was a kid, but as I got older, I started to empathize more and more with my parents. Since I have moved to US and far away from my home, it makes me the one who always worry about them, especially recently because Wuhan is my hometown. Quickly after the news of the whole city shutting down, I got word that my uncle had to stop his cancer treatment because of overwhelming number of COVID patients, and both my cousins still need to work in the hospital where a lot of the coworkers were infected. I video chat with them as often as we could, but once the camera turns off, all the horrible thoughts rush back in. And that was the time we were crunching for this film. I remember we're animating the hospital sequence when the father's character feel hopeless and sits on the floor. At that moment, I could totally sympathize with his pain. I guess this is a good example of life imitates art, especially now, at the time where people around the world are isolating and craving for connections and preoccupied with health and well-being of loved ones. I think the story of Windup is really relevant.
It is, and it's very beautiful. Just wonderful film. Brings a tear to my eye every time, even just thinking about it. Brian, you're next.
Yeah, so with Lost Kings, and mine was about the boy looking for food. The inspiration was it started with the feature film. So I wrote the feature version first, and then the short was adapted from that. Both really, though, are inspired by an interest that I have in morally ambiguous situations, and especially just thinking through what it means to engage with people in different financially desperate situations, and what it means to consider and have empathy for what it looks like to be in those situations. Drove me to want to tell this story and the larger story that allows me to do it with a lot more nuance. But yeah, those two combined are kind of what led this short to be what it is.
Great. Alejandra.
Well, Disrupted Borders came about when Kathy Chen, one of the producers, was approached by Wendy Sandoval, one of the protagonists of the film, trying to make this sort of robotic arm for her friend Shelly Salcido, who has double limb deficiency. She was born with a genetic disease that she cannot move either of her 4 limbs. So Wendy has been trying to make this robotic arm for her. And Kathy approached Ramon Villa, who is a producer of the film. He has a production company in El Paso, Texas. And Ramon and I had worked for some time in other projects. And he just realized that the story of these 2 girls had a lot to do with a cross-border narrative and with women and young girls' experience at the border. So he called me out to get involved because I've been working. Those are the subjects of other works of mine. So he invited me to jump in the project, and well, has been quite a journey because, I mean, the production of the company of the film was stopped by COVID. But fortunately, we were able to approach the girls enough time to have a film and narrate their struggles and their strengths, which I don't know. I find inspiring. I think it questions gender norms, border narratives, and also disabled body narratives that I think I don't know, it's very interesting for me and hopefully for your audience.
Inspiring is definitely the word I would choose for the film. The girls, the story, the whole thing, and we're thrilled to be able to share it as part of this year's festival. Our other question that we'd like to ask all of you to share is, it's really more of a wide open question, but if there was one other thing you definitely want people to know about your film, that might be a backstory about the making of the film, something that happened, or just one really interesting thing that you think the audience would appreciate knowing, please take the time to share that now. And again, we'll start with Mehrdad.
Can I steal 2 interesting things that I want to share? Is that allowed? Well, so one thing I really want to say is, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, the family was everything that you see on screen. They are warm, loving, kind, welcoming. And, that expression, you've never met a stranger. I mean, that is the McDonald family to a T. And from the instant that, 3 perfect strangers from LA, crashed into their home in Austin and, came into their lives with cameras and started recording everything. I mean, it was instant family and instant bond. And, so we really just, we had an amazing connection with them and Marley and the whole family and wanting to tell her story and in a way that was just reflective of the light and beauty that they all really represent. So that's one thing. And then kind of a funny story was that I wanted to get Sam. So Sam is one of these insanely multi-hyphenated, talented people that literally can do everything. And he's like world class at all of it. So he was our cinematographer and co-director. So I wanted to get Sam access, what they call in the rodeo world, on the dirt. So, and that's very hard to do because the rodeo doesn't really want random filmmakers from LA, indie filmmakers running around the dirt where, they could potentially get hurt or run over or interfere with it. So I had some very interesting calls with some very interesting Southern gentlemen on a Sunday evening to convince them. And right up until the last minute, like when we were, the rodeo was about to start, I'm still in there kind of negotiating last minute, last second producing, negotiating of like, you got to give them access. We really want to get up close. And, you can see it. I mean, we have a lot of footage, obviously, that doesn't always make the final cut. But I mean, Sam could have gotten on one of those mutton himself and wrote it if he met the weight and age class. So he was right up in there in the action. And that was kind of a fun, challenging aspect of getting access to the dirt. So
great. I can't wait to hear what Sam's take on all this is.
He's right. Yeah, that was it was a bit of a nail biter. We weren't sure up until the moment, and we only shot for 2 days, so it was a very kind of compact, quick little shoot. And so there was not a lot of room for error. So it was lucky we were able to get down there. But I think just one thing to add was maybe a big emphasis for us creatively was sort of figuring out how we could tap into Marley's personality in the formal elements of, the making of the film, the way it looked and the way it moved in terms of the edit. It has this, we tried as much as possible to kind of embody her personality, and it has this kind of spontaneous, quirky rhythm to the edit, and I think the photography as well.
Gotcha. Yibing, how about you?
I think the cool things about making this film is we were using a game engine. The reason, we use Unity engine to make this film. The reason we chose it because, a lot of us were from traditional animated film making pipeline, like we worked in Pixar and Disney. And usually in the progress of making the films, we have to imagine how the final film will look like. Like the animator will animate in Maya, but the Maya view is totally different than the film like everyone see on the big screen. So we try to use the game, because game is real time, so what you see is what you get. So what cool about it is everyone can start together and collaborating with each other. So the animator will be like actors in the live action film, and because they can actually see the environment and lighting, they can actually feel the tone of the movies. That's really cool. But the hard part is first, we got a team of artists all over the world, 10 different countries. We have around 20 artists. Half of them are from game and half of them are from film industry, which means some of them know how the game engine works and some of them know how to achieve feature film quality. However, this is, for most of us, this is our first time collaborating with each other. We have different languages. Sometimes the game people talk about things like spawn character, and film people say, what does it mean? And also make it harder is since most of us were working at home, so that means if we have to make sure the film can run smoothly on personal desktop. If it crashes on one person's computer, it will affect the whole schedule. We need to find out what's the cause and what's the issue and optimize it as soon as possible. And like compare with traditional filmmaking, which have a huge render farm and renders like hours to render one single frame. If we do the math, we're millions times faster, which push us into the corner. If we want to do this, we need to try new things. We have to invent new features, both of which are very hard. And on the other hand, it's quite rewarding. We feel like we are changing the history of real-time rendering. And like since we made this film and we have the assets, we can easily turn it to a game.
Wow, that's great. To see the finished product and not know what all went into it, it's an incredible story. Thank you, Brian.
Well, first of all, I don't get to brag on my cast and crew enough, so I just want to say they were incredible. It was like one of the best teams I've ever had. So the film is completely them as much as me behind it. So I just like to brag on them. They were incredible. As far as stories go, I think Paul might remember the last film I brought to Cleveland. I had to shut down a street for a remote control car chase scene. So I thought I'm going to do something more simple. I'm going to do something a little more contained in a house, but I always seem to make it a little bit more complicated. And when we got in there, the blocking was super tricky and we had to create a lot of emotional intensity and timing that seemed actually realistic and real for that. So it was meant to be a smaller, more contained project and it grew more complicated, but it actually made it really fun. And the bike riding scene at the end, the one shot, was the thing I was the most nervous about going into all of it. And it ended up being probably the most difficult shot we ever got. Hopefully it looks natural to those that watch it. I think that it does. But we were losing sunlight, a classic moment, right? You're losing sunlight. You're sitting in the back of a truck. Your DP's like harnessed to the truck and it's very independent filmmaking. We're in just a neighborhood street and we got it on the last take. So it was a pretty high intensity moment and so much had to be right. There's a lot of subtlety in the performance that the actor needs to give while also riding a bike really fast towards us while we're driving backwards, trying to catch him in focus. And so once again, I had an incredible team. You know, my lead actor, my DP, they were all incredible. So it was stressful, but it was a ton of fun. And that's kind of the one story I think of for that one. It was definitely a test of can you get the one shot you have to make the whole film work, and thankfully we did.
It's great for the audience to find out what goes into those shots that you would never think that. Just they're just recording a guy riding on a bike. Yeah, not so much. It's all right. Thank you, Brian. Alejandra.
Yeah, of course.
Well, I think one of the most interesting things about the film, besides, of course, the story of these two amazing girls, is how much of a collective transporter effort this project is. I mean, I think it was a great idea of Ramon to invite me to the project, but it did gave us some obstacles, because I live in the Mexican side of the border. I am a Mexican citizen, and to be going across the border would just bring so many questions from customs, and people don't really understand what it takes to do a film in this part of the country. I mean, the US and even Mexico. So they don't really understand what you're doing, and they're just wondering why you're coming across the border every week or every other day, So it was a sort of like what a migrant has to go through all the time as part of the process of making the film, which is part of the girl's story, which is part of my story as a director. And if it wasn't because of the efforts that we made as a team to make the film possible, I don't think it would have been able to happen in that way. It would have been easy just for them to get a director from El Paso, Texas, but it was a great experience. I mean, I don't want to make just random comments about our identities, but I mean, I'm from Mexico. Ramon is Mexican American. Kathy Chen, which one of the producers, and she was very, very involved in the process of the film. She's Chinese American, married to a Mexican, and I mean, I think all these experiences, like diverse experiences that we brought to the film, help us approach. And plus, what the girls from their own experience have brought to the film made it very special and very. It has layers, and I hope that we reach the complexity of life at the border without going too much to the very commonplace that we see about migration and how this border life happens, So, yeah, I think that's
it's a great story to illustrate much of what you're talking about. And your film faced the challenges you had to overcome. You're talking about border-related issues, then COVID, and then to finish off, we're one of the first festivals that is going to have the pleasure and honor of playing your film. And of course, in the process of completing the film, all the things happened in Texas where they were trying to finish the film, where there was no power and people didn't have water. And I know there was some concern about us even having a finished film in time. Thankfully, that is happening, and we're so excited to share the film, and congratulations to you and your team for overcoming all those obstacles. And to all of you, again, thank you so much for taking the time to join us, share your stories and insights on your films. We sincerely appreciate it. On behalf of everyone at CIFF, allow me to thank you for joining us for this roundtable conversation. In addition, we also have to thank you, our audience, for joining us for today's Shorts Roundtable. We wouldn't be here without your ongoing support. We wouldn't be here with you to bring film home. We hope you'll consider supporting our challenge match again this year, presented by Cuyahoga Arts and Culture, to support the future of our festival. As always, our goal this year is to reach $145,000, and we are so grateful in advance for any contribution you can make. To make a donation, or to purchase tickets, or to check out our full schedule of Filmmaker Conversations, please visit us at clevelandfilm.org. With that, please stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll look forward to seeing you back here again very soon.